Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Massiangelo, and I am the Global Business Development Director working at Impetus Digital. At Impetus, we believe all new great ideas start with a conversation. Our online collaboration platform is the perfect place for not just starting these conversations, but also for continuously building on the ideas and insights generated over time and really creating authentic relationships with partners in the process. Having these big, courageous conversations is how we can start to implement change and positively disrupt healthcare. In this podcast series, we will be talking to some of the brightest minds in the life sciences and biotech industry and get their take on being an effective leader, navigating digital transformation, and ultimately enhancing patient care. Today, I am joined by Samir Vattompadam, who is currently the Vice President, Program Executive for EQRx, which is a Cambridge-based biotech company focused in reimagining medicine and drug development with the goal of making medicines more affordable and sustainable for patients and the healthcare system. Previously, Zamir worked in various commercial roles globally for Seagen Inc. and Roche. Thanks for being here with us today, Zamir.
Thanks, Jess. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So maybe just to start it off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and how you ended up in your current role?
Sure. So the journey started very differently. So my background was in the lab. So I went to McMaster University in Hamilton. Did a degree in cancer and immunology, working on developing early cancer vaccines. And this is way before any notion of the modern cancer immunotherapies were made a reality. So a lot of doubt, a lot of questions as to whether that was going to happen. I loved the science, but quickly learned that I didn't love the lab, and frankly, the lab probably didn't love me either. Everything seemed to be a bit extractive and difficult. But I wanted to use my scientific background in different ways, and I was able to get into pharma originally as a sales rep for Aventis prior to them being bought by Sanofi. And it's just a really interesting experience, whatever your first experience in pharma is, because you see things from a perspective where the goal is to get the drugs to patients. And the partnership with academia is really strong and important with pharma, but I found in pharma, there's more opportunity to impact patient care. I took on a few sales roles at Aventis and at Sharing, eventually moved on to Roche in Canada, where I was also in sales. And this is during a time where Roche really started exploding with their oncology portfolio. So Avastin was starting to grow quickly, really monitoring, and their HER2 molecules were also coming on board. But I took the chance to change up from sales and become a medical liaison. So I did that for a few years, which honestly is probably one of my favorite roles throughout the career, just because you have this great work-life balance, but also such a dynamic role in that you're doing different things every quarter, every year, different products, keep it fresh. Moved into the Helm office as a medical director for HER2 positive breast cancer, and eventually switched back to commercial and was a product manager within Roche. After about a couple of years doing that, was approached to consider a role in global in Switzerland. Originally, I'd said no. I said no, everything was fine. I was born and raised just outside of Toronto. Wife was there, family was there, everything was comfortable. But I started talking to a few people, probably most importantly my wife, about the opportunities and what this could mean for us, and not just professionally, but also personally, taking a job abroad. In the end, we just decided what's the worst case scenario. Like the worst thing that can happen is we just don't like it and we come back to Canada, which is always going to be there. So we moved to Basel in 2014 as a global product manager for one of the hematology molecules, the anti-CD20. And then eventually moved on to work in the immunotherapy space, which actually came full circle with my graduate degree, still working on a PD-L1 molecule in Roche. I spent a couple of years doing that, and then got the bug again to try something different. And that's when the Seagen opportunity came up. And it was just such an incredible opportunity going to a company that had such a great pipeline, steady leadership, and the opportunity to build them from being a single product, US focused company into a global multi-product company, which they are now. And then most recently, as of a few weeks ago, actually, got that bug again to try something different, which is going to bring me to Cambridge eventually when we relocate throughout the pandemic, and joining EQRx, which I believe is doing something really unique and dynamic in trying to change the way drugs are developed and launched into the market, away from the traditional, but really doing it with the patient focus and affordability as a core tenet of what we're trying to do. It's not just about getting drugs approved and researching them, but really seeing that innovation pull through the entire life cycle of development. I think my journey, the simple way I would describe it is taking chances and trying different things. The worst thing that can happen is you can do something you don't end up liking, and you just find a way to do something different. It's really been great for meeting different people, for having different experiences, and just personally really rewarding living in different places in different countries, and great opportunity for me, my family, my wife and kids as well.
That's amazing. That's quite the professional career that you've had so far. And this new role sounds extremely exciting. And I think it sounds like a really interesting company. So looking forward to kind of seeing the growth there with this new company and what kind of comes of that. So maybe looking back at it, in the past 10 or 20 years, or if you went 10 years back to your career, what would be some advice that you would give yourself in order to be this great leader that you are now? What kind of learnings would you take now that you would bring back to your younger self?
So I'll first say, I think I have a lot of steps to go still to be a great leader, but I appreciate the comment. I think it'd be a few things. I think I'd definitely tell myself to take more risk. Risk is a great thing to take on when you're young, and not just well, but you just have so much to learn at that point, and it's a course correct if you go wrong. I think making a decision early in my career to leave the lab and not necessarily to stick it out. I think sometimes you will get that advice to, hey, stick it out, wait it out a little while. Honestly, sometimes you just have a gut feel on what's right, and I think people can listen to that. So taking more risks and stepping outside of your comfort zone. I think the other aspect, particularly in pharma, is making sure you build your network. It's a difficult thing to do, particularly if you're an introvert and you necessarily are not the one who's going to reach out to people just proactively to meet them. But there are different ways of doing that in terms of joining different groups, just networking within your own teams, your own department. It just starts with reaching out to someone. And I always early on in my career thought, why is this person going to want to talk to me, or why are they going to want to help me? And over time, I've just realized most people are willing to help. I'd say 90% of the people are willing to sit down and have a coffee or have a Zoom and talk to you about, career advice opportunities and just give you a different perspective. It may not be the most productive discussion 100% of the time, but it will give you a different perspective. And I think in this industry, because of the way we partner within groups, within departments, but also between companies, between vendors and other partners, governments, payers, the ability to network is so critical to be able to get things done. Because at the end of the day, yes, these are all companies and organizations, but it's really just a group of people working together to try and achieve something. So building that network is really critical, not just for your own personal growth and career growth, but actually just getting things done in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that is some great advice. And you really realize how small the industry is as you kind of move around to new companies and meet new people. Everyone kind of knows each other. So it's always great to really build that network early on in your career. So I think that's great advice. And I think we're all hearing it right now in the industry that even without COVID being a factor, even before that, we started hearing about this idea of digital transformation and it being kind of so prevalent within the pharmaceutical industry right now. What would you say needs to happen for pharma to truly embrace this digital transformation, or this kind of buzzword that we're all using these days?
Yeah, the pandemic's forced us to think differently, which I actually think in a way is a bright side. It's forced us to think about how we get the work done, what modern travel looks like in collaboration in non-personal spaces. I'll be honest, personally, I miss the congresses and the face-to-face interactions that in person, and I think there's a lot of value in that. But I think, to really embrace this beyond the pandemic, you didn't want to lose the lessons from the pandemic. You really have to go all in on digital transformation. You've got to get beyond just using the simple digital stuff, a website or an app, and really think about how you can digitize your entire system. be open to crazy ideas. I know in pharma we are such a regulated environment, and appropriately so. I mean, we work on people's lives and well-being every day. You always have to keep compliance in mind and how to do something, but it's also super important to be open to new ideas. Look at examples from different industries, right? Look at what they're doing in automotives or what they're doing in tech. How different organizations are incorporating technology, and also reaching out and talking to patients and patient groups about how they get their information. Where do they get their information? What type of interaction do they have? I would assume a lot of patients right now have moved to telehealth. Companies like Teladoc kind of supporting that need of not being able to go in. So it really has to be a broad embrace of the technology, not just on commercial when you're thinking about how sales reps run a sales are interacting with physicians, but also how are we developing drugs? Can we use AI technology to look at how we can streamline the process? And we continually refine some of those approaches to whether it's site feasibility or initiation of sites to do things a bit more efficiently. I think regulatory is going to play a really important role in this to see what gets approved and what doesn't in terms of the technology that companies can release. But I think it comes back again to that networking of being able to build the right partnerships with companies that are not just pharma focused, but maybe just tech focused in general to get some outside ideas. It's a bit of a cliche thinking of outside the box, but you don't have to necessarily think of outside the box. You just have to look at other companies that are doing things differently in a different environment and think about how it might be applicable to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the point that you made around, we always think of it in terms of the commercial side or with reps or MSLs. That's where we think digital transformation really is prevalent, but it could go so beyond that. And there are so many more use cases like you were mentioning. So I think that that's a really good kind of thought starter and kind of provoking thought to have in terms of really what we can do with digital.
Yeah.
So kind of going off of that a little bit in terms of key challenges. So what do you think are some of the key challenges that we as an industry are really facing right now? I mean, of course, COVID is obviously a big one, and that's changed a lot of the ways that we work, but even beyond that, what would you say some of the key challenges are?
Yeah, I think, this is speak to the company now right now. I think affordability is an issue across healthcare, not just in the US, but globally. Right? We've seen some of the effects of the pandemic on not just how it's affected people with COVID, but even people with other diseases, maybe not going in for their regular checkups, or cancer patients not going on for their scans or their post-treatment scans as often as they should be because of COVID. That's put a real issue in the spotlight of not just how COVID has affected people with COVID or diagnosed with COVID, which has also had its own toll, but the ripple effect across healthcare of how it's affected other treatments, certainly healthcare workers being pulled in from other areas. I hope we build in a more redundant system where there is appropriate preparation for a pandemic. We know what to expect now, but I think the nice thing about it is we've seen what technology can do to help solve the problems. Even 10 to 15 years ago, had this happened, you wouldn't think about having a vaccine approved less than a year after the pandemic shut down. So I think that shows you a lot about the flexibility of our system when push comes to shove. I think what we need to do is build systems that can actively leverage that without a response needed, like a pandemic, where you don't want to wait for the pandemic to think about how to do it. There has to be some post-mortem after the pandemic across different industries, whether it's pharma, whether it's regulatory, whether it's payers, to think about what did we do differently during the pandemic that frankly doesn't have to be a pandemic dependent response. It can be something we implement more consistently. So I think having that flexibility in how we deliver healthcare is going to be really important post-pandemic.
Totally. I think that really hits the nail on the head. And even, agility and talking about being agile, we keep hearing this so much as well within the industry. And really this past year has been the true definition of having to be flexible and agile. So I think that, going back to what we were before is probably not going to be the scenario. So being very flexible and agile and understanding and really embracing that is going to be a really great way for the industry in total to to really come up with more innovative and new ideas and really progress in the future.
For sure.
Well, that is pretty much all the time that we have today. Samir, it was really great to learn more about you and your extremely successful professional journey so far, as well as really gain some insight into your thinking towards the industry and the different challenges and really what's going on right now in the world. So to all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. And as always, reach out with any questions or comments. We at Impetus always look forward to furthering these discussions and conversations. So until next time, have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we will be chatting again soon.